If you're any sort of longtime fan of One Piece, then you must know at this point that there's not very many Logia fruit users in the story, which makes sense given the fact that out of the three main categories of Devil Fruit, Paramecia, Zoan, and Logia, Logia is the rarest. Now, there are some select groups of Devil Fruits that are more rare than Logia, like Ancient and Mythical Zoan, and in those cases, we've only seen like 2 examples of each. We've seen, with the Mythical Zoan, we've seen Marco and Sengoku, and with Ancient Zoan, we've seen Jack and X-Drake, and that's it. But even so, compared to the other categories, Logia, there's not that many users. I think Paramecia, we're up to like over 75 at this point. Zoan, I think, is around 30. And keep in mind, of course, this is just referring to the canon Devil Fruit users in the manga, not talking about video games or fillers or anything like that. But with Logia, we only have 12 known users. And by the way, that's including both Ace and Sabo, who, you know, shouldn't even really count together because they have the same Devil Fruit ability, the Mera Mera no Mi. So honestly, we only have 11. 11 unique Logia fruits introduced in the canon of the story. And what do they all have in common? Well, a Logia fruit allows the user to transform their body into some sort of element or effect of that nature, literally turning their bodies intangible. Like for Smoker, he can turn his body into smoke, so attacks can pass through him. He can stretch out his body using smoke to, like, send out his arm and grab an opponent and bring him back in, like some sort of rubber boy or something. And so that's really interesting, and from all the other Logia users and fruits that we've seen so far, they take on some sort of basic element that can naturally be found on Earth. So since there's not very many of them, let's just go all through them right now and go through their different elements or the effect that they represent. Okay, well, we got smoke, sand, fire, lightning, cold, darkness, light, magma, mud, gas, and snow. Okay, so there you go, and you might have a few problems with those, like you might say darkness isn't an element, it's the absence of light, how is that an element? It's like, we're in the world of fiction right now, you know, darkness in the context of One Piece is something that can be, like, actually, like, harnessed and physically held, so let's just go along with that. You could say mud's not really an element, it's just earth mixed with water, okay, whatever, but it's naturally occurring, okay? That's the point. Probably the weirdest one out of all of them is Aokiji, which is not ice, it is actually cold. The ability just to reduce temperature to the point where, you know, water freezes. You know, he's not like just like summoning ice out of nothing, he's just lowering the temperature of the water in the atmosphere to create ice. So that got me thinking, you know, some more Logia fruits, and I started thinking about metal. Because metal is something that naturally occurs on the Earth, a bunch of different types of it occur, so wouldn't that be really cool to have a Logia fruit that's based around metal? And I started to think the problems of that, because all of these elements, at least most of them, have to deal with something that's rather intangible, like smoke or fire, that doesn't really have a solid form. Or in the case with Karibo, with the Numa Numa no Mi, the mud fruit, it is something that you can physically touch, but it's like a semi-solid, where it's like a liquid sometimes and can be converted into a solid sometimes, depending on how Karibo wants to use it. And in Karibo's case, it's like this weird, like, pocket dimension he has, where he can, like, draw people into his swamp, into his mud, and keep them in his body, even though they're several times larger than him, he could store them in his body there. So, with that being said, a metal fruit would be rather interesting, because it would be the first example of a Logia that has a straight-up solid form, not a liquid, not a semi-solid, or made of, like, plasma, like with Eneru's Goru Goru no Mi, just a straight-up solid. But it's something that is an interesting premise. Now, many of you that are fans of One Piece, that watch, like, every episode of the anime, might remember that, that gold-silver mine arc thing that was after Dressrosa, that was the tie-in for the movie film Gold, where we get introduced to Bill. Bill was a cool character. I didn't really have a problem with Bill. I mean, yeah, he was sort of like every other cliche filler villain in One Piece. But he was alright. He had a kind of cool design and everything like that. And he had the power of the Smelt fruit. So literally turning, it was a Paramecia, but it literally turned his body into like a superheated forge, where he could take various forms of metal and he could consume them, and then his body heats it up, and then he could make, you know, metal weaponry or armor or whatever out of him. He can also turn his body into a giant furnace man thing. There's actually a lot of Devil Fruits that have to deal with turning the body into heat, or emanating some massive amount of heat, now that I'm actually thinking about it. We had Asino in that Ice Hunter arc, then we have Bill, then we have Oven, who's the only one that's canon so far, and I also think there was another one in one of the movies that could use some sort of heat ability. So, yeah, that's interesting how we keep running across this same basic premise for a fruit, you know, until Oda finally makes it canon with Oven, I suppose. But yeah, it's a really cool ability because a lot of metal alloys, you know, you have to, it's not just naturally occurring on the Earth, you have to take more than one, you know, ore as the raw ingredients and combining them together, or in the case with steel, you have to take iron ore and you have to combine it with, like, carbon, right? But in order to do that, you need to superheat it up. So that's the cool thing about Bill's Devil Fruit, how he could, you know, he could just chomp down on iron ore and then perform that smelting process in his own body and then create like a steel sword out of it. At least I think that's how it works. I'm not a fucking chemist, but you know. Okay, so with that being said, what are some naturally occurring metals that you don't have to, you know, require like to superheat a forge or anything in order to make, or remove the carbon out of or anything, or combine together? What are just some naturally occurring metals? Well, there's a few. You got copper, you got silver, you got gold. I'm gonna put gold on the side though, because we've already had a fruit that was all about gold, and that was the Gol no Mi. And in that regard, it might actually, I don't know if Oda wants to consider that canon or not, because I know Oda has a little bit of, you know, leeway with the movies. Usually people will come to Oda and they'll be like, hey, we were thinking about making a movie all about this guy with this devil fruit. He can manipulate gold. What do you think about that? I'm sure Oda would have probably given his 2 cents on it, like whether it should be a Logia or a Paramecia, or, you know, like, oh, I'm not going to do anything like that in the story, so you can have it. Something with that effect. But the Gol no Mi was a Paramecia, in that Guild Tesoro could not transform into gold. He can only manipulate gold. Gold being a very soft metal, so he can kind of like convert it into this state, and he can like shape it into anything he wants. It was actually a really cool kind of ability, but it was not a Logia. What else do we got? Well, we also have platinum. Platinum is a fairly strong metal. I'm pretty sure it is anyway. That's naturally occurring. So just imagine how that would work. Just take any of those random metals I just rattled off, you know, copper, silver, platinum. Let's just use platinum because platinum sounds cool. All right, you know, you eat the platinum fruit, it's a Logia, you know, you bite into it. Oh, that's disgusting. Oh, crap, I could turn into platinum. I am Platinum Man! Now, right off the gate, how would this work with the intangibility effect? You know, he's like, oh shit, there's a giant volley of cannonballs coming towards me. It's alright, everybody. I'll be okay because I could just turn into my element and I'll be fine. So you just turn yourself into platinum, which kind of like, you know that power-up in Super Mario Bros. 3 where Mario turns into like a solid statue and he can't move, but also things like can't hurt him? That would be like the same basic effect I'm thinking of here, where you turn solid platinum, so you can't move, but then like the cannonballs slam into you. Now, you could bring up a few things about this, like, well, if the thing, it depends on what's about to hit you. If it's just some guy with, like, a baseball bat, if you turn into solid platinum, the bat would just shatter apart and you would be fine. But if it's something fairly tough, like Garp's fist, you know, let's just say Garp decides to punch you without hockey, you know, that would be something that would be strong enough to break apart the platinum. What would happen? Okay, would it physically damage you? Like, oh, that his fist was stronger than platinum. Oh, I got broken up into 1,000 pieces. I'm physically injured now. I'm injured. I'm dead. I can't move. Or would it be similar to what Aokiji does? Because Aokiji, you know, lowers the temperature of everything around him, literally turns his body into an ice sculpture, and if he gets hit with something, he does shatter apart, but he could just reform himself back to the way he was. You know, so even though he does technically get shattered, it doesn't actually hurt him. Although, I would be interested in seeing, like, what would happen in that regard if Aokiji gets shattered, and then people, like, pick up various parts of the ice, and then, like, you know, throw them away from the area where he got shattered so he can't actually form back up. I wonder how that would work. If his power was quite literally just the essence of cold itself, probably wouldn't work all that well, but that's interesting to think about that. Like, Aokiji shatters, then you pick up a big ice chunk and just chuck it in the water. You know, what would happen at that point? So yeah, which one of those would go about it? You know, would it just be like, oh, you broke apart my platinum body, but I can just reforge it back? Like I'm like the T-1000, you know, like I can convert my body into like liquid state of metal and reform myself. That would be cool. Like if it ever was like a metal fruit and it was a Logia, it would essentially be the T-1000. And that would be something that might be a little bit copyrighted. But hey, no, well, you know what? T-1000 in One Piece? Why am I bitching about that? That sounds amazing. You know, knives and stabbing weapons. Oh, that would be cool. So something about that regard, maybe if not just taking advantage of the solid state. I mean, I'm trying to think outside the box here. I'm trying to think of maybe a Logia that could exist that's not the same as the others, where they all go intangible, and that's what the liquid metal thing would be. But I'm trying to think of, like, what would a metal fruit be if you actually were just solid metal statue and you couldn't go liquid or anything like that. You were just stuck like that in a frozen state. Hey, I could see some advantages to that. For one thing, stealth. I mean, imagine that. Imagine if you just turned your body into straight up platinum and you're just frozen in place. You could strike a pose. You know, I would go into a museum and be like, and then freeze myself like that, and then people would be walking by. You know, if you were still aware of your surroundings, that would be incredibly useful. If you could still see and hear while in this state, then that would use observation hockey or whatever. That would be extremely useful for reconnaissance purposes. You know, people just think, oh, what is that? Oh, it's just some weird statue. Just, you know, ignore it, whatever. Just some random statue on the side of the road or in some building or something. No one pays any mind to it. And then it turns out to be somebody that actually can transform into solid metal. So that could be useful there. The sheer level of you know, you would have a buff for defense depending on what metal it is. And by the way, I also heard, because like I said, not a chemist, I had to do some just, you know, quick and dirty research on this before the video, but from what I've read, there are natural occurring elements, you know, like iron and copper and silver, like I said, and there's like vast quantities of those on Earth. But there are other traces of metals, like metallic alloys. There's just not a lot of them. And that's why, like, you know, mining them wouldn't really work, because the natural way that the alloy is formed, there just isn't a lot of it, so it's much easier to artificially create these alloys. So if that's the case, maybe that would open it up to a lot more possibilities there. I mean, it's still technically naturally occurring, just not as refined as it would be in our world. But then again, it is One Piece. You know, if Oda really wanted to, he could be like, you know, even though steel might not occur in nature, I'll still give, here's a steel fruit, here you go, have fun, you can turn into steel. You know, he could always just do that, you know. On top of the toughest kind of metals that I know one of them is tungsten. I knew that right off the gate, because I know tungsten has the highest melting point out of everything. I knew that. But on top of that, I'll just break out the cheat sheet here, because I'm not going to try to pretend. We also have steel, titanium, and something called Inconel. I have no idea what that is, but I'm just gonna Wikipedia that later. Those are 4 of the toughest kind of metals around. No one's gonna keep you down, so to speak, if you had those types of metals. And if you could combine it with hockey, well, then you would have the ultimate defense and offense there. Maybe that's one of the reasons why you don't include a metal fruit as a Logia. It would be so powerful. You'd be like the T-1000. You could freeze in place. If you add hockey to it, then you can almost be indestructible. If you add hockey to, like, your steel fist, and then add up hockey, and then you break a freaking island in half with that, probably. That would be neat. Transforming just simple parts of your body into it. That's something that we see Logias use a few times. Usually with Logia, they like to take advantage of the fact that their whole bodies can transform into the elements, so it's not just like when you're fighting hand-to-hand, you're going to use, like, your arms and your legs. But when you're a Logia, you can kind of stretch that out to be any part of your body, because any part of your body can transform into your element. So, you know, an opponent comes up from behind you, you know, if you're Crocodile, you could send out like a plume of sand from your back and attack them with it. You know, or with your Eneru, you can electrocute them from any part of your body, so, you know, take advantage of all parts of it. But if you had the metal fruit, you could take advantage of that. Like, if someone tries to stab you in the back, you could just convert the back of your neck into steel or iron or whatever, so, you know, just pong off of it. But other than that, you would probably take advantage mostly of just the same in your, you know, hand-to-hand combat, you know, arms and legs, you know, ironing up your fists and then just pummeling your opponent that way, which would be a really cool way to see a fight in One Piece. I could see that definitely going down there. Like a metal person fighting against Luffy, that would actually be really funny, because Luffy is, like, immune to blunt damage as long as hockey's not involved. But I could totally see, like, someone punching Luffy with this, like, steel fist so goddamn hard that it, like, just sends him flying away and bouncing off various walls. That would be funny. So yeah, that's basically just what I want to bring up. Like, would a metal fruit in the story, if it was going to be included, you know, canonically, we're not just talking about Bill's thing or Gil Tesaro's thing, is it going to be included in the One Piece story? And if it is included, would it be a Logia or would it be a Paramecia? You know, going along the same line as Gil Tesaro with the Paramecia, like, I ate the copper fruit, now I can manipulate copper. Which, by the way, that still has advantages on its own, because that way maybe if you was like, oh, I can manipulate copper, then I could take this copper and combine it with tin and I can make bronze! Ooh, you know, I don't know. That's another thing, too. Like, maybe it would be a metal fruit, you would have dominion over all metal, not just, or all types of metal, not just, you know, copper or anything. It would be literally just a metal fruit, and you can manipulate metal. That seems really overpowered, or you can combine things together just to bypass the whole smelting operation. You could just have dominion over metal and just transform into whichever one you want. That would be a thing. Or maybe at least all the naturally occurring ones. So that's something there. I'm just trying to think outside the box, guys, to get some more Logia fruits in it. But usually whenever Oda introduces a Logia fruit, it's something that's like, we don't usually get that many per arc. You know, we usually get, like, a bunch of Paramecias introduced in arc. Coming up in Wano, we're going to have Kaido, who's going to have a bunch of artificially created zones. But we don't usually get, like, oh yeah, here's 4 Logia users for the arc. Although that would be something that would pretty much be, you know, a game changer if that happened. Like, we get introduced to the big bad group of an island, and it's like 5 people, and they each are decked out with Logia fruits. That would be actually really scary, because we haven't dealt with that. Like it's usually like with Crocodile, he was a Logia, Luffy fought against him. Eneru, who's a Logia, Luffy fought against him. And then we get the Admirals, of course, who are really intimidating. Karibo is just an idiot. Caesar Clown, Logia, Luffy fought against him. I think Monet was like the first Logia user that the Straw Hats directly encountered. And the person that fought and defeated Monet was not Luffy, it was Zoro, was the case. I think he was the only one. I'm not really including the Admirals here, because that wasn't really ever a fair fight. Like, Zoro and Sanji fought against Aokiji, but come on now, that's not... Even Luffy couldn't do anything there. You know, and Blackbeard, also a Logia, fought against Luffy. So, yeah, I mean, it was usually Luffy taking on the Logias, but if it's like an arc where it's like 5 Logia users all stacked back to back, we're gonna have to have Luffy and Zoro and Sanji each fight a Logia user. Maybe, like, Nami and Chopper and Usopp team up to take on another Logia user. That would be cool. You know, Robin and Frankie take on another one. You know, like, all the Straw Hats have to fight against a Logia user in one of the arcs. That would be really intimidating. And if we're going to introduce all the Logia users, you know, throw metal in there somewhere. That's all I'm asking, Oda. I'm giving you story notes. Take the notes. It's okay. Royalty free. You can have them. But I think I've made my point clear at this point. So anyway, thanks for watching, everybody. Thanks for checking out the video. Tomorrow, October 19th, is going to be the beginning of the 13 Nights of Horoween. Ooh, get it? Horo, because, you know, whatever. Yeah, so check that out. It's going to be 13 videos for 13 days leading up to October. Each video is going to be about one of the top villains in One Piece, or antagonists that were voted for by you. So tomorrow will be number 13, and then Friday will be number 12, and so on and so forth until we hit Halloween. So that'll be fun. Thanks for being supportive. Thanks for subscribing and all that good stuff. And yeah, signing out. Later, everybody.